Next part of the show we want to show is a new part that we've introduced called News Watch. Just a quick look at some of the things that have been happening over the week. And first what I'll do, I'll show you a picture and you need to tell me what the story is behind, don't leave it. Story is behind the picture, inshallah. First one. Do you know him well?
No.
Okay, this is Alexander McQueen, one of the most famous designers in the world, British based, London based, went to the Central St Martin's College in central London, and he killed himself 40 years old, suicide. And they're saying the reason he probably committed suicide because his mum died a few days before. He put a note up on his Facebook saying that he can't. You know, just put a couple of the lights down so the bulbs can't hear properly. That's that was. He's saying that he couldn't take it. Now the reason, look at this. Obviously, it was big in the news, and he's a person that was head designer at Gucci. He had everything that he wanted, the money, the fame, and the relationships. I won't go any further than that. But when his mum died, he couldn't take it, and he committed suicide. And the reason I want to show this is because in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't only tell us the best way to satisfy our desires, to satisfy our instincts, how to live with other people, how to live with our families, how to earn money, how to spend the money. It also gives us satisfaction in our mind. It answers the most fundamental question that we have as human beings: why are we here? That's a question that every person asks. Why are we here? And it answers that in a perfect way, that our mind is satisfied, that we are happy in our mind, and that anything that happens to us in this life, we always remember that there's a day of judgment, there's a day that Allah will make justice between all of mankind and even the animals. If there was an animal that had thorns, and with an animal that didn't have thorns, Allah will make justice between these two animals on the day of judgment because one of them didn't have thorns. So there's a day when justice will be held. Even if we didn't find injustice in this life, there's a day and there's an afterlife that is just and that lasts forever. So with us in that mind, we as Muslims should be able to take anything that happens to us in this life, because we're strong mentally as much as we're strong spiritually. So if we have deaths in the family, we can take that, and we pray that we will meet them when we die. But Alexander McQueen, when his mum died, he couldn't take it, because in their mind they're not strong, because for them this is the only life. And if they're facing some troubles, they commit suicide. And the suicide rates are huge in Western Europe. Huge. But for us as Muslims, we have the strength of mind that we know there's a day of judgment and there's an afterlife where justice will be held. And if we had a hard life in this life, we hope that we'll have a peaceful life in the next.
You said something in the window.
In the window?
You said you put something in the window.
What was he put in the window? What did he see in his window?
You were going to say something.
No, I didn't say nothing. Next picture.
You told Dr. Aafia Siddiqui.
Yeah, can anyone tell me what happened with Dr. Aafia Siddiqui this week? Okay, speak someone else. No, Abdul Halim.
He got convicted in American court for 60 years for attempted murder.
Okay, this is the unfortunate story of our sister Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, who was missing for 5 years, then turned up in Bagram Air Base as a prisoner by the Americans, and then last week she got sentenced to 60 years for trying to kill American servicemen. And this is a huge injustice, and shows that the American legal system and the American system itself is a corrupt, hypocritical system. They talk about freedom, human rights, the justice, but there is no justice when it comes to Muslims. No justice whatsoever. And this is what we've seen, the sad case of Aafia Siddiqui. She was missing for 5 years. She turned up in a Bagram air base, accused of all these charges of terrorism. And the case that she had in the court, none of those charges actually were brought forward about terrorism, but about her supposed attack on the military personnel that were interrogating her, and she was tortured as well in these interrogations. And this is what we've seen. But we've seen the Pakistani government say mere words that we're going to do everything we can to return our citizens. But we know in truth that they are at their knees towards the American imperialists, and they will do nothing to get back their citizens. But when they want to hand over citizens to the Americans, they do that in the shipload. Next picture. Binyam Mohamed. Linked case. He was in Guantanamo for 4 years, tortured in Morocco, tortured in Pakistan, came back to his country. He's a British citizen, and he said the British Secret Service, the MI5, were complicit in his torture. Because when he was in Morocco, 3 times there was an MI5 personnel in Morocco, and they knew that he was there and that he was being tortured. And now there's these cases now against the MI5 and against any of those in the government that knew about his torture. And this shows once again what we saw happen with Aafia Siddiqui, and now we see with Binyam Mohamed, that when it comes to Muslims, all of a sudden all the human rights, all the justice goes out the window. It all goes out the window, because for them Muslims are cheaper than cheap. They're bargain basement. You can do anything to them, and no one really cares. And the last one, Valentine's proposal.
Where's the rose, man?
The reason I brought this one up is because of today's Valentine's Day, and what they're saying is one thing that do not expect, not yourselves, but the general public, you shouldn't expect on Valentine's Day is a proposal. Because recently, the last week, the figures have come out for the marriage rates, and it's the lowest it's ever recorded. So the rates of marriage are the lowest since records began. And this is the state that we see in Britain: social breakdown, single parent families. When you go to school, it's rare to find, your friends that have a mum and a dad, and it's a clear breakdown of the social fabric of society. And today is Valentine's Day. Everyone's out there celebrating Valentine's Day. I thank you that you've come here to listen to an Islamic talk. But this is, what we see. It's the excesses and then the breakdowns. We saw what happened last week with John Terry, playing around with with some other girls when his wife was when he was on England duty. And we saw the Ashley Cole news stories came out of Ashley Cole. It's throughout this society. And Islam teaches that the fundamental block of society is the family. The family unit is the most important aspect of the Islamic society. And this is what Islam teaches. It's not terrorism. It's not about killing people. It's about a better life for all of those in society. And marriage and family is fundamental to that. So, Jazakallah khair for taking part in our news watch.